evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. The big stories tonight. The palace, in its latest defense of the early inoculation of government troops, says the shots were donated by China. But donated or not, the FDA says the vaccines should have undergone regulation. After much confusion earlier in the day, Malacanang has finally released the order. Foreigners from 20 areas with reported cases of the British variant of COVID-19 will be barred entry into the Philippines. Lawmakers tagged for public works corruption are disputing their inclusion in the list. Malacanang is denying using the supposed reveal, to cover up the early use of unregulated vaccines among soldiers. The country has given Janssen Pharmaceutical the green light for the conduct of Phase 3 clinical trials here. Tests may begin in a few weeks. And despite all the hardships of 2020, 9 out of 10 Filipinos will usher in the new year with a renewed sense of hope. That's according to the latest SWS survey. Let's begin with officials in disarray following President Duterte's revelation that some military officials had gotten early access to COVID-19 vaccines. In its latest defense, the palace says the shots were all donated. But does this mean the vaccines can skip FDA regulation? We find out and discuss in Greg Gregorio's report.
Those who have received shots of unregistered COVID-19 vaccines are not liable under the law, but the people who administer the vaccines are. Food and Drug Administration Chief Eric Domingo says this is because no COVID-19 vaccine has been given an emergency use authorization in the country yet.
Yesterday, I gave an order to our regulatory enforcement unit para magkaroon ng investigation at malaman kung ano ang status at kung ano yung nangyaring pagbabakuna at kung anong bakuna ang nagamit.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines confirmed that members of the Presidential Security Group have been vaccinated due to the nature of their job. It denies, however, that other uniformed personnel within their ranks have been vaccinated. If there were, the AFP says they are not privy to the arrangements behind the inoculation.
Unique kasi ang organization ng Presidential Security Group, although it is an integral part ng AFP, ay ang kanyang principal o ang nature ng kanyang trabaho is to protect, secure, and defend the President.
Under the target immunization against COVID-19, the poorest of the poor and frontline health workers were supposed to be prioritized. This is why some were disappointed that the priority list had been disregarded.
Para sa akin, mga ordinaryong tao muna kasi hindi kaya bumili nun para makapaghanap buhay na. Kasi hirap na hirap
Sa battle between the virus, ang sundalo nila is mga nurses.
Isumaya lang kasi bakit nauna pa yung mga PSG pero kung sinasabi naman na parang protektahan yung ating Pangulo, tama lang po yun, pero dapat hindi pinipili kung sino yung...
In one who says the chiefs, more health experts sought explanation over the issue.
Food and Drug Administration serves as the bastion and it serves as the gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper,
for
yes.
Quality, safety, and efficacy of food, drugs, cosmetics, and medical devices. If you go against the policy of just bringing any product in and then administering it to people, it's a complicated process.
Republic Act 8203, Special Law on Counterfeit Drugs. At kung babasahin natin para maintindihan lang, 2 paragraph lang yan. Ang ibig sabihin ng counterfeit drugs, unregistered imported drug product. At ang prohibited act.
But Palace spokesman Harry Roque insists that the vaccination is not illegal and that the shots received by the PSG were merely donations.
Kaya nga po yung donasyon na wala po yung kondisyones. At yan po ay galing sa vaccine na ginawa po ng China. I think sinabi naman po ng Presidente, Sinopharm po yan.
But for the FDA, donated or not, the process should involve them and the DOH, which in this case did not happen. Health Secretary Francisco Duque, who was present during the IATF meeting over the weekend, did not question the President when he made the vaccination claim.
Kinausap ko rin po si Secretary, nagulat din nga po siya. We were not consulted. It was not done in consultation with the Department of Health or the FDA.
With all this, Officials still urge the public not to get unregistered and unauthorized vaccines. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration has approved the application of Janssen Pharmaceuticals to conduct Phase 3 clinical trials in the country. FDA Director General Eric Domingo says the regulatory aspect has been completed and trials could begin in the next few weeks. Janssen becomes the first vaccine maker to conduct late-stage trials in the Philippines. It is one of the manufacturers that have applied for trials here, with China's Sinovac and Clover Biopharmaceuticals still undergoing regulatory review.
The next step now would be for the DOST vaccine expert panel to assign the area where the trial will take place. And then, of course, they will probably have a few preliminary preparations and then start recruiting subjects for the clinical trials.
Metro Manila and Davao City, together with several other areas, will remain under general community quarantine until January 31st. Also under the same classification are Isabela, Santiago City, Batangas, Iloilo, Tacloban City, Lanao del Sur, Iligan City, and Davao del Norte. The rest of the country will be under the more lenient modified GCQ. This comes as health experts continue to warn about the possibility of a post-holiday surge in cases. Meanwhile, the province of Sulu is eyeing imposing a lockdown to prevent the entry of the new COVID-19 variant after reports that it has been detected in Sabah. Sulu Governor Abdusukur Tanstan says they prefer to impose a lockdown since the province lacks health facilities. Tan requests for the president to ask Sabah or Kuala Lumpur to suspend the repatriation of undocumented Filipinos from these areas.
We are also considering na even inter-island, baka i-lockdown namin. Ang plano namin na magla-lockdown kami for as long as necessary.
The Skyway Stage 3 was partially open to motorists today. It cuts travel time between the North and South Luzon expressways to just 30 minutes. Shaila Francisco did test if that was true. She joins us from Balintawak. Shaila, so was it a quick travel?
Robbie, I'm not going to spoil the experience just yet, but as you can see from where we at in Balintawak, there are already a lot of vehicles using Skyway Stage 3. There are even more vehicles now compared to when it was opened earlier in the morning at around 10 a.m. But it wasn't smooth sailing the entire day. There was a slight buildup, especially in the afternoon, as some motorists were unaware that there are only limited ramps open during its partial launch. Angie and JL were among the first motorists to use the Skyway Stage 3 after it was partially open on Tuesday. Their verdict?
Very nice. Very smooth. Mapakabilis ng aming biyahe mula Laguna, napadali yung aming hakbang.
Okay naman, swabe yung daan, mabilis lang. Kaso hindi lang kasi sila advice na walang exit. Kaya napalayo kami ng napalayo. Pero okay lang, maganda yung daan.
The likes of JL and other motorists were unaware that only 7 ramps are available to exit and enter Skyway Stage 3 for now. Only 4 of 6 lanes are also okay for use, since there are pending asphalt works in the remaining lanes. The Public Works Department says the elevated road will reduce the 1-hour travel time from Makati to Quezon City. No better way to prove it than to try it for ourselves. We left Buendia at around 2:45 p.m. As with any new road, it was a bump-free ride, and travel was relatively fast, save for a slight build-up along the Manila section due to limited lanes. Around 200,000 motorists are expected to use the newly opened Skyway Stage 3 daily. It is also estimated to clear EDSA and C5 of 55,000 cars per day, easing traffic in major thoroughfares. And finally, we've reached the exit point in Balintawak. So, how long did it take? It took us 29 minutes to get here, but the DPWH says travel time will be cut shorter to 20 minutes once they open all 6 lanes on January 14. The 18-kilometer road connects the North and South Luzon expressways. It promises to cut travel between the 2 points to just 30 minutes from 2 hours previously.
Yung northbound and southbound, lagi nasa-traffic yung Skyway, yung ikutan sa sukat. May solution na kaming dalawa na iduduktong yan para mawala na yung traffic dyan sa bikutan at sukat exit.
No toll fees will be collected during the first month of operation. But once fees are charged, the Public Works Department says the cost will fall within the range of existing toll charges at the Skyway.
Under deliberation sa TRB yung toll. So, makakaroon lang ng decision pag kumpleto na delivered na fully yung project. Mas mahal ng konti dahil elevated siya. So, more or less yung Skyway, yung cost ng Skyway, which is I think ngayon mga 160 pesos.
Wait, sabihin mo kung go na. Robbie, in some areas here in Skyway Stage 3, speed limit is capped at 60 kilometers per hour, but motorists are recommended to travel only at 40 kph for safety as there are ongoing asphalt works. Now, motorcycles using 400 cc's are advised not to use the Skyway Stage 3 for now until January 14. Robbie?
Maraming salamat, Shiloh Francisco, reporting live from Balintawak. We'll go for a quick break. When the big story returns, lawmakers being linked to alleged public works corruption are denying their inclusion in the list released by the president. And President Duterte has vetoed about a dozen items in the 2021 budget, including the reporting on the usage of intelligence funds. Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Representatives being accused of having dipped their hands into public works corruption are coming out one by one to deny the allegation. Some are questioning the timing of this supposed reveal, especially when the president himself is being questioned over the vaccination of soldiers. Ria Fernandez has this report.
Just a few hours after signing the 2021 national budget, President Rodrigo Duterte announced House lawmakers who are allegedly involved in the DPWH corruption. The list was from Presidential Anti-Corruption Commissioner Greco Bellica. Despite this, the president admits there is no hard evidence against these lawmakers.
I just want to assure everybody that yung pagbasa sa pangalan ninyo is not a condemnation or an indictment that you are guilty of something. In the same manner that I would tell the people that do not take it as a gospel truth na totoo talaga to.
3 of those named are members of Liberal Party, which is a known critic of the Duterte administration. A close friend of presidential son and Davao City Representative Paulo Duterte was also included in the list. The lawmakers were accused of having a hand on Ghost Project, receiving kickbacks, bagging infrastructure projects through their own construction firms, and protecting questionable district engineers. However, the lawmakers cried foul over the president's baseless accusations.
100% sure. Kasi pinapatulan ng PACC at saka ng ibang agency, di ba meron tayong 888 number. Ako ang feeling ko nga, meron lang tumawag o nareklamo, isa sa dalawa lang kalabang ko sa politika or yung mga contractors na blacklisted, na blacklist ng DPWH. Kasi rineklamo namin. So, retaliatory ang nangyari.
It's happening for the past 4.5 years, no, na every time na umiingay ang oposisyon, dumadami ang mga batikos, din naglalabas siya ng mga listahan, naglalabas siya ng mga paratang na walang ebidensya para lang siguro takutin.
Some also slammed Bellica due to the allegations.
I would like to see Mr. Bellica face to face because my political rivals have been bragging from the very start that Mr. Bellica is their patron, that Mr. Bellica is ang tinatawag nila dito sa amin, si Mr. Bellica ang tumutulong sa kanila. Siguro, at ayaw ko sanang paniwalaan, pero siguro kaparte ito ng tulong ni Mr. Bellica sa mga kalaban ko sa politika dito sa probinsya.
Alam ko naman po saan nanggagaling yung galit sa akin ni Commissioner Greco Bellica. Kasi kung matatandaan, noong October 29, sa isang radio interview, nasabi ko dito na nagsimula naman lumabas yung sinasabi niyang corrupt na congressman na involved sa DPWH nung lumabas yung issue niya tungkol sa duty-free Philippines.
They are also asking Bellica to personally explain to them how he conducted the investigation. The palace, meanwhile, has defended the president's decision to reveal the names, saying it was not meant to cover the vaccine issue with soldiers.
Hindi na kailangan bigyan ng reaksyon yan, no? Sus Mariosep, hindi po kinakailangan ng diversionary tactic ng presidente sa isang bagay na siya mismo nagsabi. Bakit tayo may magpapalihis? Nanggaling mismo sa bibig ng presidente yan. Alam nyo, ang presidente, hindi po yan nagpapaligoy-ligoy. So binanggit nga niya yung mga pangalan ng kongresista, hindi pa sila nagkakasala, imbestigahan pa. Pero ang mensahe sa mga kongresista at sa mga DPWH.
For its part, the Justice Department says the report may be referred to the Anti-Corruption Task Force for validation and case build-up. The DOJ adds that if the PACC report is already complete with evidence, it can be submitted directly to the Office of the Ombudsman. For House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco, the accused legislators enjoy the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, as stated earlier by President Duterte. He laments the lack of verification in coming up with a list, although he acknowledges that the matter is out of the Commission's jurisdiction. The House Speaker agrees that the matter should be brought before the Office of the Ombudsman pursuant to due process. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
Public Works Secretary Mark Villares vowing to implement President Duterte's directives to curb corruption in his agency. The DPWH chief says he will reshuffle district engineers allegedly involved in the anomalies. These would include those named by President Duterte based on a list submitted by the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission.
We'll follow due process, but the President gave us clear directives yesterday, which we will implement. At the same time, tuloy-tuloy naman ang investigasyon namin. Nagkapag-issue na kami ng maraming show cause orders sa mga personnel na may mga complaints.
After inconsistencies in announcements, the Philippines has finally imposed a travel ban on 19 more countries with the British strain of COVID-19. Del De Vera with the details.
Foreigners from 19 more countries with the British variant of COVID-19 are now banned entry to the Philippines, according to Malacanang. In a statement, spokesman Harry Roque says President Rodrigo Duterte approved the ban from December 30 until January 15, 2021. The travel order covers those who are transiting through these countries, which span Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Filipino citizens would be exempted. They must, however, undergo full 14-day quarantine even with negative swab results. The Manila International Airport Authority made the announcement first but had to delete its post after Roque denied earlier the travel order.
If you ask me, is there now currently a travel ban? My answer is no. Will there be? Perhaps. Anong detalyo? Let's wait for it.
This despite the Health Department already confirming Duterte's approval.
Inaprubahan na ni Pangulo yun. Kagabi, there are about 20 countries now where the UK variant COVID-19 virus, hindi naman nagbago yung COVID-19. Yung COVID-19 pa rin yan. Yung strain, hindi nagbabago yung strain.
Former National Task Force Advisor Tony Liachon said the new variant might already be in the country. In an interview with 1PH sa Totoo Lang, Liachon said the government must do more than just impose lockdowns when the worst case scenario happens.
Pero kung ikaw ay galing sa Inglaterra or doon sa apat na country pinakamadaming na-mention ngayon, lalo na malapit to Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, ako rin ibaban ko na rin yan kasi kung nagban nga ang Japan do sa ibang countries at ang London ano ba namang nawawala sa atin sa ekonomiya kung 2 linggo lang, 3 linggo. Iba kasi yung travel ban or borderline measure kaysa sa lockdown dito sa atin.
Liachon urges the government to invest in proper diagnostics by immediately purchasing vaccines and setting up more public hospitals. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello says returning overseas Filipino workers will be allowed to return to the country. He says they are expecting 60,000 to 100,000 more to return to the Philippines. For News 5, Dale De Vera, we're One News.
And these are the other big stories tonight. President Duterte has vetoed close to a dozen provisions in the 2021 National Spending Plan, including a proposal for a mandated quarterly report on the usage of intelligence funds. In his message, the president says the government has privilege against public disclosure of state secrets regarding national security matters. This means quarterly reports on the use of intelligence funds to both houses of Congress are no longer required. He also vetoed 5 provisions on the use of state agency incomes, saying it should all accrue to national government's fund. 9 in 10 Filipinos are entering 2021 fueled with hope instead of fear. That's according to the latest SWS survey. But this is the lowest rate since 2009. The November survey shows that the positive sentiment was higher among families who consider themselves not poor, followed by those who identify as borderline poor. Hopeful Filipinos were shown to be highest in Mindanao, followed by balanced Luzon and NCR, while 88% in the Visayas are feeling positive. We'll take one more break. More of the big stories when we return. Please stay with us. Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. The municipal government of Bukawi, Bulacan is urging local leaders to consider allowing the use of safe firecrackers and pyrotechnics. This as retailers continue to see low sales just a few days before New Year. Laila Pangilinan with this report.
Filipinos are doing their last-minute shopping for firecrackers in Bukawi, Bulacan. Many opted for the much safer sparklers and consumer pyrotechnics. Pal and daughter Erica came all the way from Pangasinan to purchase 6,000 pesos worth of pyro fireworks.
Maano lang yung spirit lang ng New Year. Mapasaya lang.
Ipoy from Candelaria, Quezon might just be the day's biggest spender. He purchased 50,000 pesos worth of consumer pyrotechnics.
Sa loob siguro ng 8 years na nagpapaputok ako, na-enjoy naman yung mga kapitbahay ko.
But some consumers are spending less on firecracker products this year.
Isang factor na ganun kasi syempre pagkain muna at saka mga necessities.
The Bukawi LGU has imposed stricter measures to ensure that no illegal firecrackers and pyrotechnics will be sold in shops.
Nakabantay naman ang ating PNP, ang ating Bureau of Fire, ang DPLO ng local. 24 hours silang titingnan lagi nila, chinecheck nila. Kasama rin natin ang mga probinsya, mayroon ding national.
In Metro Manila, residents are banned from using and selling any form of firecrackers. Almost all mayors have agreed to impose this in a bid to avoid mass gatherings and other health protocol violations. Retailers feel the pinch as sales have declined. Bukawi Mayor Jose Santiago appeals to local leaders to consider the use of consumer pyrotechnics and sparklers to help save the local fireworks industry.
Baka pwede na ito naman yung mga aerial naman, mga safe yan. So dapat na in-identify ko ano yung mga pwedeng gamitin pa rin ng ating mga kababayan.
Bukawi retailers are hoping to still end the year with a ban, especially as they have yet to recover from their losses due to the pandemic. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan, we are One News. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan.
Now time for the big stories in sports. A look at the game with Laura Lima.
Thanks, Robbie. In NBA news, the Portland Trail Blazers outgunned the defending champs Los Angeles Lakers 115-107. Damian Lillard led the shootout with 21 of his 31 points coming in the second half, while teammate Gary Trent Jr. dropped a career-high 7 three-pointers on his way to 28 points. LeBron James filled the stat sheet with 29 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. But Lillard and McCollum kept it in control down the stretch with a 12-6 run. The Trailblazers will next face the Los Angeles Clippers this Thursday, Manila time. In another Western Conference matchup, the Utah Jazz ran away with a nail-biting win over the Oklahoma City Thunder, behind a Donovan Mitchell game winner 110-109. Bojan Bogdanovic led the game-high 23 points, but it was Mitchell who sealed the deal for the Jazz with a go-ahead layup with 7 seconds left in the game. This is Utah's first win on the road against Oklahoma City since 2010. The Jazz will host the Phoenix Suns next this Friday, New Year's Day, Manila time. Catch all the NBA regular season action on NBA TV Philippines. And that's it for the latest in the world of sports. Catch us later at 9:30 p.m. only here on One News and One Sports Plus. I'm Lara Liman, and this has been The Game.
A dog took possession not of a ball but of a boot as it disrupted a professional soccer game in Bolivia. The dog invaded the field running and jumping during the game between the Strongest and Nacional. It stayed in the middle of the field during the match while biting the soccer cleat. The game was then halted for around 3 minutes, after which a player was able to carry the dog off the pitch. It may not have scored a goal, but the pooch did sure capture the hearts of thousands in Bolivia, including a player who adopted the dog. Fans later on named the dog Cachito. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News. Good evening.